Welcome to it, sports fans. It is a Friday, and it is episode 7 of the From the Bleachers podcast. Awesome to keep rocking it out. Today we're going to talk about a few interesting subjects. Of course, Premier League today just announced VAR will be employed from next season, video assistant referee. So what will that mean for players, fans, everybody involved? So we'll talk a little bit about that for the 1920 season. And then, of course, for the second time, we started last week with episode 2. It is the FridayFive. This week I'm going to discuss and give you my list of the top 5 Premier League midfielders of all time. So that's going to be awesome. Love putting lists together, doing the research for that and running down memory lane. So top 5 midfielders ever. That'll be our next interesting topic, all in the Premier League, of course. And then this weekend, ultimately, the battle for the number 1 spot in rugby. That's what it's being labelled as. Steve Hansen saying this week, whoever wins between Ireland and New Zealand will be number 1 in the world. So that is the intro. Don't want to waste too much time. Of course, let's get into the good stuff, why we're here. Thank you for joining me. If you are listening to this, appreciate it. Share, subscribe, and look out for more content that'll be coming out on the From the Bleachers TV page on Facebook, Instagram, and indeed I hope you've subscribed to our YouTube page. If you haven't, get on over there and subscribe. But let's get into it. VAR. The Premier League have announced that they're going to adopt the VAR system from next season. Of course, we've seen it with mixed reviews throughout the World Cup. I know it's been in Holland, the Carabao Cup, and many other tournaments besides the big one that is the Premier League. Charlie Austin went off last week. If you didn't see it, you need to see that video. Just for pure comedy, it is unbelievable. He lost his cool and he said he was robbed a fair goal. Dan robbed us a fair goal, said Charlie Austin. Southampton felt they were wrongly done by. Of course, I thought it was balanced out because I thought there was a goal disallowed on the other side. But anyway, Charlie Austin says they cost them 3 points and possibly a place at the end of the season in the Premier League, in the big time. Of course, the small clubs will always say that. But you know, in life, I've seen so many of my friends, and you may have this as well, who think, well, I'm like this. I'm an accountant. I like a structured life. I like a quiet Saturday. So I should date somebody who is an accountant or very, very organized and likes a quiet Saturday in and likes to sit and be plain and have an average sized TV, maybe one dog, maybe a house, picket fence. So they think, okay, let me just get somebody who's like me, and that way there'll be stability. And I've actually had that in my life a couple of times where friends have done that. Both of them, and I'm thinking of 2 cases in particular, 3 months later, terribly bored. It's like dating yourself. And nobody wants to be with themselves twice because you're with your thoughts all day and then you're with the other person. My point is this: unpredictability is the foundation of victory and loss. It is the foundation of enjoyment and sorrow. Unpredictability is everything if you want the reward of enjoyment. Sport is about that polarity. In victory and loss, there is the sorrow, and then, of course, the ecstasy on the other side of that. That's what sport's about. At the very highest level, there's why people pay ludicrous prices for satellite television around the world, cable television if you live in America, is so that you can watch something where you don't know if your team is going to win. No matter how good your team is, the package is always better if you don't know if your team is going to win. That's the beauty of international sport, the very cutting edge professional sport. It is about wins and losses, and the great part is not knowing who's going to win before the game. Unpredictability. It is the very foundation of enjoyment and sorrow. And without those two, sport at the highest level is meaningless. There is only one thing better in sport than winning. And that is indignation. If you don't know what indignation is, the righteous indignation of man. Let me rather put it this way. The woe is me. The ref robbed us. Aren't those the sweetest words besides we won? I think they are the only sweetest words in sport. The ref robbed us. I'm not sure, but I think I prefer saying that than we won. I don't know. Within all of us as people, I think there's the indignation, the righteous indignation of man, or woe is me. The ref robbed us. For whatever reason, on a deep level, just feels better that we won. It just does. Any sports fan out there, I'm pretty sure you won't admit it, but it does. Sometimes sport is an escapism, and it's just great to have a moan at somebody. You don't care who, but just to feel as though you've been wronged. The rise of something like Arsenal Fan TV lets me know that fans love to have a go, and people love it in sport. I know people say we watch it in jest, but they love to see somebody whinging about team in sport. Whether it's their team, another team, Arsenal Fan TV and its rise in popularity lets you know that we love to watch the part, not just we won, but when somebody else has lost, or even if we lose, somewhere where we can express that. And that channel's unbelievable. It's great. I love it. I watch it all the time. Whether they win or lose, I love what Robbie and the guys are doing there. But it became popular because it almost became a caricature channel at a stage for when they lost. That's what really put them through the roof. But people love watching that. And there's something to that. There's something to that indignation. We just love to have a moan that I really want to get into. You know, referees, no matter what sport you're talking about, on the intrinsic level, at a very base level, there's a tacit understanding that I don't have to explain to you, but the referee is the villain by default. He's always the villain by default because more than the other team, it always feels like the ref is another guy who's against you. If you're a fanatic or a fan, as it's known, fanatic, anybody who's not you, right? Anybody who's not you is against you. And what's great is the other team wears a different kit. Remember back in the day, referees would be in all black. He's supposed to be in the background. But intrinsically, underneath all of the sport, yes, we're playing against the other team, but the ref has always been the other guy who's against us. Right? In sport, the ref is always the other guy who's against us. We won't say it because we say we should respect the ref, but the beauty of especially football being a working class game is that the ref feels like an authority. And remember, football at its very roots was a rebellion where the working class could go and the guys in the factory couldn't tell them what to do. And the referee was an authority, so he was always distrusted. You always never loved the ref. You always gave him a hard time. And whether through his own doing or not, the referee became the villain. And he had no choice. The opposition, it's a given. But the referee has no choice. He, by his very presence as an authority figure in a working class sport, is by default the villain. And the reason we love sportsmen and women is not because they like us, it's because they allow us to dream and imagine, and they fill the role of the gladiator today. So we love sportsmen and women because they're different to us. They're highly skilled, genetically, they've won the lottery, many of them. So they'll have fast twitch muscle, or they can jump really high, or they're cerebral and they can process difficult situations and high pressure situations much better than the regular human. And that's why we watch. They allow us to escape and transcend our normal daily lives and see genetic freaks doing incredible things. So part of being a referee at the elite level is that, oh wow, this person is also elite because there are super high pressure, billion-dollar decisions being made all the time, and they all are made on the blow of a whistle. And that used to be a refined skill. Nobody in life is after perfection. Which is why even though we hate the refs as sports fans, on some level we respect them, because in general, the very, very good ones and the ones that are in the top leagues are really, really good, because football's incredibly tough to ref, do a great job. We know that. We know that. And we know we don't want perfection. What we want is somebody expressing high-level skill in pressure situations, which most referees do brilliantly. And when we lose that, right, everybody becomes an android, and that stops feeling natural. So everybody who says they want the VAR, my argument is this: you don't want the VAR. Your primal side might say you want the VAR, but what you really are going to get is absolute perfection. Everybody thinks it's going to be more fair, but my argument is nope. It's only going to assert the big team's dominance even more. Because remember, small teams used to get decisions, usually of horrible refereeing decisions. That's generally the only way most teams in the Premier League are beating the top 6 teams. A bad refereeing decision here and there, the fans start to get up, and then the small team gets the shock victory. That's generally how it happens. So this isn't going to make it more fair, because there is no fair. The only way to make it fair, if you really want fair, people say they want it to be more fair. It's not about fairness, because if you wanted fairness, there would be a salary cap, and the best teams, like they do in the NFL and the NBA, would have the hardest roster. So the best teams would have to play, let's say, their entire season away from home. Or they'd have to play the top 4 teams more often. That's how you make it fair. If you're really after fairness, is you start with the money. Everybody has the same money, a salary cap, and you can only buy so many players in a season. Then we're talking about fair. But there's too much conjecture, even with VAR, to ever make it fair. And now we know that the sides with the best players are going to be in situations like penalties, situations where the lower teams are more desperate, so they'll lunge and get more reds more often. We know that. So if you think this is going to make it more fair, the only people it makes it more fair for are those that are already in the ascendancy. What it does is take out the maverick, terrible decision by the ref, which gives Leicester, which gives Burnley, which gives Fulham that terrible decision, that 1-0 in the 90th minute, where he's slightly offside, but okay, they give it, the linesman gets it just wrong, and the guy tucks it away, and Arsenal lose away to Fulham, hypothetically. It eliminates that. And remember, sport is about those moments, once again, where people can dream. And if you eliminate that, you eliminate half of the experience. So what I want to do is I'm going to give you who I think are the 3 biggest winners and the 3 biggest losers. Right? As I've mentioned, I think number 1, the big teams, because the small teams will get less shock results. Right? Because big teams are always going to be in the box more often. So in fact, if anything, Eden Hazard is going to get more penalties. He never gets, a guy like him, he doesn't get enough penalties. Arsenal are going to get more penalties. They get in your box more. Man City are going to get a truckload more penalties. They're always in the box. Burnley are going to get less. They're never in the box. They're never in the situation for VAR to actually help them. The lower teams very rarely have VAR situations that are going to be a penalty or an ascendancy decision. The tech company that's going to get to supply all of the equipment to the Premier League. Imagine that. They're the real winners here. And thirdly, I think, can't you just watch the highlights, girlfriend? I think she's the winner. Because now it's an Android. It doesn't matter. You don't have to watch really the games because you're not going to miss anything. You can't miss a bad decision because that'll be overturned. You can't miss a controversial decision. That'll be overturned. You can't miss we already have goal line technology, which I have my problems with because it's all overturned. What you're doing is you're taking the experience of going down and seeing a skilled human being perform a high human skill, a highly refined human skill that is called a referee. And you're reducing him to an android. The three biggest winners, the big teams, the tech companies who are going to make an absolute boatload of money for doing nothing. And then can you not just watch the highlights, girlfriend? So good for you, ladies. Now you have your boyfriend, husband has no reason to watch all of the games because he's not going to miss anything. Can't you just watch the highlights? Let's watch Desperate Housewives. She's the winner. The three biggest losers, and I think they don't know this yet, but it'll be the pundits, it'll be the review shows, and then it'll be the managers of small clubs. Those three, I think, of the personnel that work within football are the biggest losers. The high quality referees in the lower leagues. No referee has to be skilled anymore. All you need to do is be there to manage a game, and anybody could do that. I could get my nan, if I could get her fit. You could get a 70-year-old to ref a Premier League game now. All he needs to do is have a little bit of cardio, be able to jog here and there. If he misses a decision, not a problem. We go upstairs. So now reffing has stopped being a skill, and it's tragic because the lower league referees now, there's no way you're going to get promoted because you can't make a bad decision anymore. Under VAR, you cannot make a bad decision. And then, most importantly, and this is where I think the crescendo of it all, the fans get to lose out. The very indignation that says we want VAR, it's going to be more fair, is actually going to rob you of the best part of being a football fan Monday morning at the office, saying the ref robbed us. People who watch the game 4 times, watch an incident 10 times on YouTube. That's who is being robbed. Ultimately, the authorities have ignored the bigger picture. The fans' experience of getting to engage, chat at the pub, chat on Monday mornings, has been robbed. Football is not the NFL or rugby. Stoppages are natural in those sports. The ebb and the flow are not a big part of those sports. A line out. Right? In the NFL, of course, special teams have to come on the field. Defense has to come on the field. Stops and starts are naturally, intrinsically woven into those sports. The beauty of football is its simplicity. It always has been. That's why it is the world sport. Put the ball in the middle, kick it in the other side. Kick it in their net, stop them from putting it in your net. That's what football has always been. The only football stoppage you get, throw-ins. Throw-ins. It's the only time you're not kicking the ball with your feet. It's the only time the game is not dynamic. And what this steals from, especially in the English Premier League, is that momentum wins so many games for people, and a part of that momentum is the atmosphere in England. What VAR does is the 2-3 minutes, no matter how efficient you get it, part of the fans chanting, singing, is the momentum swing. And once again, I think this is where the small clubs are going to lose out. Because all you need is for a small club to get one bad decision against the big club, and then the fans turn and the momentum swings, and then people get onto the ref's back. That's a huge part of football. That's a huge part of the home and away advantage of, well, having your home ground is the fans can actually influence the referee, and that's such a wonderful part of sport. That is now gone. Refereeing has ceased to be a skill and will now be available to anybody. You can stop at the local Asda if you're in England, pick out Sally in the front row, get a kit on her, and she could ref the Manchester Derby. And it would not matter because it is now no longer a skill. The right decision isn't always the best decision for entertainment. Remember, these guys are forgetting that this is entertainment. Another sign to me that billionaires made this decision is that they have forgotten the fans. It is all about the money. That's the only argument I ever hear. There's too much money on the line. What about the fans? Fans are paying £1,000 for season tickets. Personally, I don't see VAR lasting more than 2 seasons because it is an entertainment business and nobody moans like the British. And once you take the right of moaning away from them, sometimes we only realize post the event the effects of the event. The fans will be crying for VAR to be done with. Entertainment has always been, and if you love movies like I do, you need the protagonist and the antagonist. The referee has always been the antagonist. Let's not take that away, because you need the polarity. You need the fans to have somebody to moan at. Entertainment is always protagonist versus antagonist, and then the good guy wins at the end. Careful what you wish for in life, because you might just get it. And here we are robbing the fans. The fans have essentially robbed themselves. The billionaires have won again. The fans lose out again. But I give it 2 years, and in 2022, 2023, I fully expect VAR to save all of us and be scrapped. Let's go to what is, I think, going to easily be my favorite sort of feature that we'll have on the From the Bleachers podcast. It is my FridayFive. So this one I need to make clear. It is the top 5 midfielders. It is the top 5 midfielders. So the guys, the engine room, if you watch football. I'm going to give you the top 5 midfielders in the history of the English Premier League. So not wingers. I'm not including any wingers. Wingers I'll do next week. Or in the future. If I don't do it next week, I'll do 5 wingers soon. But I'm giving you top 5 central midfielders that have ever graced the Premier League. Here we go. It's the FridayFive. At number 5, the best number 10 that the Premier League has ever seen. It's not even close. He's got 3 titles and a 4th is on the way. He's got Pep Guardiola for probably another 2 seasons. He's the greatest tempo controller, playmaker I have ever seen. In Spanish football, they call it the pausa. The ability to pause and have that extra second, and it looks like you've got extra time on the ball. He's simply the greatest, most silky number 10 the Premier League has ever seen. At number 5, David Silva. At number 4, he was the metronome of Sir Alex Ferguson's dynasty. For me, the most intelligent English player of the last 20 years. England absolutely wasted him on the left. They should have dropped Steven Gerrard, in my opinion. He was so good. Let me put it in perspective of how good this guy was. He was so good that he retired and he came back in January 2012 when City won the league. And the very next season, Man United won the league and he was an integral cog in that. Having been retired for 6 months and being on the coaching staff of Man United. 11 titles, 107 goals later. What an incredible career he had. The Ginger Ninja, Manchester United's favourite son, Paul Scholes. Scholes at number 4. At number 3, I think this man and his rival captain gave us the most epic battles that the Premier League has ever seen. In the Premier League era, there has not been a rivalry this fierce. He looked like a basketball player. In the middle, when Arsenal bought him, everybody thought, who is this guy? Outside of Michael Essien, he is the greatest athlete I have ever seen in the English Premier League. There is no doubt in my mind, I have not seen a guy cover grass like this and be as imposing in the physical challenge as this man. As I said, he gave us the greatest rivalry versus Manchester United's captain that we have ever seen throughout that dynastic era. He came in with Arsene Wenger and he halted Manchester United's absolute dominance of the English Premier League, and he captained Arsenal to an invincible season. For those who don't know what that means, an unbeaten season in the Premier League. He was an absolute box-to-box demon, 3 times champion. He was the captain, and he absolutely embodied everything Arsene Wenger was, which was pure class on the field. At number 3, Patrick Vieira. At number 2, He was absolutely hated by West Ham fans because at the age of 18, his uncle Harry picked him for West Ham, and the rest is history. Labelled Fat Frank by the West Ham fans, for 6 years he endured the jeers and the put-downs of his very own fans. Remember, let's also put it in perspective. I've always said it, expectation. Everything is easy until there is expectation. Frank Lampard Sr. was an absolute legend. Not only did Uncle Harry give him a chance, but also Frank Lampard Sr. was assistant coach at West Ham at the time, as though the fans needed any more reason to dislike the man they called Fat Frank. Can you imagine the expectation? In 2001, he moved to Chelsea. In 2003, Roman Abramovich arrived, and a dynamic duo was put together in 2004. A man came from Marseille called Didier Drogba, and the rest is a dynastic duo. Greatest midfielder striker combo that the Premier League has ever seen. In 2009-2010, he scored 22 goals, got 14 assists in 36 games, all from midfield. I don't mean from the number 10 position. He was a genuine number 8. He went box to box. 3 titles, 4th in goals overall, 177 of those. 4th in assists overall, 102 of those. He is England's greatest modern midfielder. Super Frank Lampard at number 2. At number 1, I don't think it's any contest. I believe he is just below Thierry Henry as the greatest player the Premier League's ever seen. But in terms of midfielders, in terms of generals, in terms of leaders, in terms of anybody who you would want if you're a coach on the field as your captain, nobody is close to this guy. And if it weren't for an incident in 1993, if Kenny Dalglish and Blackburn knew how to do paperwork, and somebody at Blackburn actually had some work ethic and had kept the offices open on the Friday, in 1993, Kenny Dalglish went and met this man and left some paperwork and didn't have the correct paperwork for him to sign. On the Friday, King Kenny shook this man's hand, but he didn't have the correct paperwork with him, but they had a deal in principle and they shook hands. By the Monday, Sir Alex Ferguson had already swooped in and stolen him from right under the nose of King Kenny and Mr. Walker's millions. He signed for a British record from Nottingham Forest, and there were doubters everywhere. Remember, Notts Forest that season got relegated. He was called a greedy child by Brian Clough. He said, "I love Keane, but he will not bankrupt this club." What followed after a game of snooker where Sir Alex famously said, "Whether you come with me or you go to Blackburn, Manchester United will dominate English football for the next decade." What followed that snooker game is quite simply, if not in all sport ever, the most dominant period in English Premier League history. From battles with Vieira to dominating Zidane and Nedved in that now famous Champions League semi in the treble-winning season, he was king. The only player in English history who was equal to Sir Alex Ferguson in terms of power and fear that he spread, not just to players on the field, his own players and every single other player who came against him. Man United had 2 managers at the very same time. They are the only club in the history of the English Premier League who had 2 managers at the same time. In Keane and Sir Alex Ferguson, they had 2 managers, which is why it was so unfair for so long. Not only did United have the most money, but then they had the most feared managerial figure, but then they had another guy who was like a manager on the pitch. Sir Alex had high standards, but from everything I've read, they were nothing close to Roy Keane standards. 7 titles, a treble, First team to win 3 in a row under his leadership and stewardship, and he set the standard. No player has embodied a football club and a community like Roy Keane did for Manchester United. Sir Alex Ferguson has written famously that even though they have fallen out, he is the greatest player, and it's not close that he's had. For me, he is the greatest midfielder that Britain has ever seen, and it is not close. Hated if he wasn't on your team, beloved in Manchester, beloved by everybody who played with him, because he got you to the podium, he lifted everybody's standard, and he wasn't going to tolerate anything but the top of the podium. There is only one Keno at number 1 in today's Friday Five for the best midfielders that the Premier League has ever seen. Ireland's favourite son, Roy Keane. Man, that's always fun. I love those lists and compiling those. So listen out next Friday for the Friday Five. I'll have the 5 best wingers next week. But this week, that was your top 5 Premier League midfielders that have ever graced the English game. Let's move on to the oval ball. This weekend is the big one. This weekend is Ireland, of course, versus New Zealand. My goodness, what a game that's going to be. What a game that is going to be. And I think for a few more reasons than just the result. I think this is the worst All Black team I have seen in 7 years. And I have my thoughts on why they are there. Remember, Steve Hansen has been in the setup, the All Black setup, for 14 years now. 2004, he came as the assistant. He came back from Wales. And he was behind the great Sir Graham Henry. He has been part of the staff. So all of these players, everybody in the setup has known Steve Hansen's voice as an authority for 14 years. Now, I don't care who you are. That is a long time to hear the same message, the same tone, and have to carry and execute one man's wishes for that long. In sport, 14 years is a lifetime. No sporting institution, which is what made Sir Alex Ferguson so great, is built to last that long under one voice. It is almost impossible. Other than Bill Belichick with the New England Patriots, I cannot think of another voice that has lasted that long in an authoritative position and continued to be successful. So perhaps the All Blacks are jaded, but they are there for the beating right now if you're willing to take it. The All Blacks look beatable without Sam Cane as far as I'm concerned. They do not have a genuine fetcher on the field. I think Savea is a number 8 and it's showing against England. They couldn't slow the ball down and Sam Cane gives you that. You think of why Richie McCaw was so great. Everybody thinks of the flashy stuff that Richie did. Yes, he turned the ball over. Yes, he was a superb ball carrier. Yes, he had superb ball skills. Yes, Richie McCaw was like a second number 8. He could link backline and forwards seamlessly. But remember his truly greatest strength and why the All Blacks always looked like they were twice as good as you was he would slow the ball down to snail's pace. I'm not saying Sam Cane is Richie McCaw, but he is very much in that mold, and Savea is too big and his body position is nowhere near it. And quite frankly, Savea is a little bit more cerebral. He's a number 8. He's not a blindside flank because he's not a banger. He's not a ball carrying dynamo. So I don't think Savea could play blindside. But what he is an unbelievable number 8, and he gives you athleticism. What I think, and I never doubt Steve Hansen, but I think Matt Todd is probably the right option. Because Matt Todd is a genuine fetcher. And they need that balance because in Squire, they've got their ball carrier. Kieran Reid's the greatest number 8 to ever play the game. So they've got all the cerebral they need. What they need is a dog. And for the first time, the All Blacks don't have a dog in that pack. I like Brodie Litalic, but he's more cerebral and clever, even though he's a tough guy. They're probably missing that number 7, who's a terrier, at the breakdown. I think another thing that's been shown, and I never want to hear this argument again, Beauden Barrett is not everything he's advertised. Fantastic with ball in hand when the weather is dry, but he can't kick under pressure. And we've seen now England took it to him. If you attack him on the inside shoulder, and that's difficult against the All Blacks because what it means is you need great second face ball. Often, because you need to run at him one-on-one with an inside shoulder supporter on your fly half's inside shoulder. It's not easy against the All Blacks because their defensive lines and everything are so great. But if you run at Barrett, and you've got that, if you attack his inside shoulder, it's now been shown that he is not everything that's advertised. Fantastic with ball in hand, fantastic when the weather's dry, fantastic when you turn the game into touch rugby. But he's probably not everything that's advertised as an international 10. What do I think Ireland's chances are? Well, I'll tell you what. I think Ireland are your typical Northern Hemisphere side. What they try and do, and the stats say Ireland carry the ball more than anybody in international rugby this year. So they kick the least. They keep the ball in hand, but I had a look at the stats. The reason for that is everything happens between the pack and the inside centre. So everything they're doing, they're not doing anything clever. Everything they're doing is happening with their big bruises. Their loose forwards are carrying off the 10, and then the pods are doing all the work. So they're not doing anything flashy in the back line, and Conor Murray and those guys, they do the grunt work. Everything happens between the forwards and 12. So they carry the most, but it's all about those big bruises and the world's most overrated loose forward ever, CJ Stander. There's no Rob Kearney, so I think that'll cost them. He's a good box kicker, and what he does is, because they are quite predictable, I don't really love Johnny Sexton as a fly half. I think he's quite predictable and boring, but he's a very good kicker. But what Rob Kearney would allow them to do is like Fourie du Preez used to do for the Springboks, is he has a really, really good box kick. What he allows Ireland to do is to put pressure on the high ball. And then they rely on their defense, and then they really, really put the squeeze on you. So without Rob Kearney, I think Ireland lose a lot there. Ireland are 6-point underdogs according to the bookies. For me, the British Lions couldn't beat this fallible New Zealand side with 4 of these guys in the team. 4 of these Irish players in the team. This isn't Chicago when the All Blacks were exhausted at the end of a long season. It's a fresh All Black side. And I think that a few of them are hungry to make a claim for World Cup spots. Goodhue is as good as advertised. Unbelievable hitting the ball. His timing, his lines, sensational at 13. The All Blacks aren't exhausted. This isn't Chicago in 2016 when they arrived and they were jet lagged and you just beat them on the last play of the game. For me, even though the All Blacks are only favoured by 6, I look at their backline, Mackenzie. I think they won't be as poor as they were against England. Good teams never, ever play 2 bad games in a row. That never happens. That never happens. If you look in the history of sport, the really great teams, sorry, I shouldn't call them good, great teams very rarely play 2 terrible games back to back. And the All Blacks were awful last week against England. Believe you me, Steve Hansen is not having that. Not on his watch. I back the All Blacks by 14. I think they'll win 30-16, and the luck of the Irish will have run out by Saturday, 10 o'clock. Before I go, let me give you one last tip on the rugby. I was just looking at the odds. France, Argentina. It's incredible that the French are favourites by 6. So if you can still go and bet, go and put your money on Argentina, because I think France are going to lose. Remember, France have won 5 in 20. Of the last 20 test matches, let me repeat that, France have won 5. Argentina are phenomenal. They've got all their European players back at 6 points. Take the under. If I'm you, I'd take Argentina to win because I think Argentina are going to win comfortably. They're going to win by 10. They're going to win 25-15. Take that. France have not won. They've won 5 in 20 test matches. Let that sink in. I do not know how the bookies have done it, but I'm sure that, I don't know if their betting will change, but if you can still get it now, France are 6-point favorites. I think they're going to lose by 10. I don't think they're ready for this Argentina team, and it is going to be embarrassing. That is it from the Bleachers for this week. What an awesome Friday show it was. Absolutely loved today. It's been awesome bringing you content this week and engaging. I cannot wait to bring you more content on Monday. It'll be awesome to see everybody enjoy the sport, enjoy the rugby this weekend. Of course, international break, so we'll take a break from the Premier League this weekend. But I will be back on Monday from the Bleachers podcast. We'll be back. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and keep spreading the word. And our content will only keep getting better and better. So for now, enjoy your weekend, enjoy the sport. Cannot wait to review everything on Monday and see how we've done. And let me know what you think of my Friday 5 greatest midfielders of all time. Looking forward to engaging about that one. For now, though, enjoy your weekend. I cannot wait for the rugby and everything that the mountains in the Western Cape have to offer. Off to trail run a bit and enjoy my life. Have a great weekend, and I look forward to seeing you Monday.